Hi, everyone, and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. I'm Lisa, and I am an English teacher. I've taught, firstly, I'm from South Africa, from a small town called Robertson. I've taught English to students from around the world in person and online, and of various ages and various levels. Our webinar today is all about teaching absolute beginners. All right. You're welcome to post in the chat and say where you are from, and I will greet everyone and chat about that later. So how this will work is we have a bunch of slides and we'll go through some information, useful information about teaching beginners. And after about half an hour, then there's an opportunity for you to ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer them all. So before we even we have from USA, from Peru, from South Africa, from New Zealand, from UK. So we have covered a bunch of continents already. So welcome. It's always fun. And Germany, you have Europe, Africa, South America, North America. Welcome, everyone. It's always great to see so many people from so many different areas. All right, let us go straight into it. Okay. So what do we mean by a beginner? There are various terms associated with beginners, so it is important for you to be familiar with them. These days, it would be very highly unusual, but not impossible, for a student to know absolutely no English at all. This is because a lot of English words have been adopted by other languages, just as English has adopted words from French and Italian and German, and as we know. So there are universal words like hotel and taxi that everyone will know, even if you are an absolute beginner. But generally, an absolute beginner is someone starting from zero, someone who really doesn't know any English at all. All right. Some students may have studied English in school many years ago, but have forgotten most of it. With some exposure with lessons, some of it comes back. These students are called false beginners because actually they do know some English. It just needs to be reignited. You need to remind those students. So they aren't starting from zero, but very close to it. So that's the slight difference. So some students really and truly know absolutely nothing, and some do know some, but they're out of practice, basically. All right. So you may have a mixture of absolute and false beginners. So that's normal, and don't panic. Everything we see today will be suitable for both categories of beginners. So it's suitable for those who really know nothing and for those who know something and need to be reminded. So it can seem scary to have a mix of students who are marginally better than others in the class, but keep calm and carry on. I mean, that is true of every level. So not only with absolute beginners. So you could have a class of advanced students who also won't all be at the exact same stage. So don't let that make you panic or freak you out, because any class there will be slight differences. The techniques we will see in this presentation today are perfectly valid for both absolute and false beginners. And don't be tempted to teach, this is a very important thing. Don't be tempted to teach the best student in the class. I think that is something we often do. This will certainly alienate the majority of your other students who will feel that they can't understand and keep up. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, not only even with just beginners. So, how might our beginners feel in class? Excited, eager, but also potentially nervous, terrified, overwhelmed, self-conscious, and extremely self-critical. It is important to put yourself in your beginner's shoes for a moment to understand what some of them might be feeling. If any of you speak a second language, I think many of us do. We don't only speak English. English might be your first language. You might have to work, speak in a second language. You might be teaching English in another country where you are learning a second language. So we all know how that feels, how terrifying that can be. So especially for adult students who might be beginners, learning from scratch can be a very confronting experience. Perhaps they're stressed because they need English for work. Perhaps they don't really want to be there, but they feel obliged to learn it. Maybe maybe it is compulsory that they learn English for work, that they didn't decide that they wanted to. Maybe they feel overwhelmed after 10 minutes and experience mental block. All of these feelings are natural, and they're very rarely a reflection of you as a teacher. I mean, anybody from South Africa who had to learn Afrikaans or a second language, there are 11 official languages in South Africa, so we all learn second languages, and we are all familiar with many second and third languages. You know, if you have to write an essay for school, how terrified you feel. If you feel some negativity coming back at you at first, it's not you, it's just them, because they are terrified. So try your best to remain upbeat and patient and supportive at all times. So what can we do to counteract these negative feelings? Luckily, lots of things, as well as maintaining your positive, upbeat demeanor, which we all have. Okay, there are lots of other things we can do to help our absolute beginners. So keep your TTT. So I'm sure you all know what TTT stands for. Teacher talk time to an absolute minimum. That is very hard. I know with some of my beginner classes, when students are not very chatty, it's very easy to talk too much, to fill in those quiet gaps. So that is really something to always keep in mind, and keep that, because the students will not talk if you are talking the whole time. Scaffold continuously. So I'm sure you all know what scaffolding means. If someone wants to type in what scaffolding means, then we will go through it right now, and I'll come back to it in a moment. But you need to scaffold continuously and set well-graded tasks, so tasks that are not too hard or even too easy, and lots and lots and lots of visual aids. I will wait and see if anyone knows what scaffolding is. All right. So I'm waiting still for scaffolding. It's a great word because it's very visual. Support. Perfect. Support with examples. Thank you, Lucia and Omema. Sorry if I didn't say that correctly. Support and support, yes. So scaffolding, if you were to build something, you put up scaffolds to support you that things don't come tumbling down. So things like prompts, stem sentences, and suggestions that keep things going. All right, thank you. Structured support Sarah, thank you. On a sliding scale as students gain more skills. Perfect. That is a beautiful definition of scaffolding. So, and something that not only with beginners, but again with all classes, something that we need to think about. Okay, let me just have a look here. Okay, also, the importance, you also have to, as I say, if we're talking all the time, then there is no chance for the students to respond. So you have to give a lot of processing time. If you ask a question and there isn't an immediate answer, wait. It's hard. I think, personally, I find that very hard. It's like you want to prompt immediately and help with the answer, but you have to actually give a moment. Beginners, more than any other level, have so much going on in their heads, listening, probably translating, then thinking of an answer, then translating that into English, then forming the sound and saying the answer. So give them time to answer your question. Don't assume that they don't know if they haven't answered after 2 or 3 seconds. This really is an important point. So you really have to give them a moment. Obviously not forever, but after You can't just jump in with the answer. Yeah, in the classroom as well, silence is not the enemy. It's highly necessary sometimes. So just because it's quiet doesn't mean that the students aren't concentrating and listening. They just haven't yet processed and come up with the entire answer. Pair work, group work, great things to do. Once students know exactly what they're doing, it's a great way for students to relax a little bit, because if they can give the answer in a group or a pair, it's not quite as scary as giving it in a whole class. If everyone is talking at once in a group, they don't feel so exposed. And you're more likely to try saying things that they might not attempt if they're speaking in front of you and the whole class, all alone. So you can't just, so if everyone's chattering away, then they might get a bit more confidence to open their mouth and speak. All right. Well-graded tasks. Also very fundamental, as giving our beginners tasks that are too difficult will crush their confidence and motivation. Because if there's something that they cannot do, then they may just give up. It's very important to make the tasks achievable, that the students can actually, so again, if this is adults or kids, the same applies, that students are able to achieve, that they're able to work it out, understand. So if you find that a task you have chosen is too easy for them, or if a student finishes before the others do, you can easily add in some elements like more questions, sentence writing, more discussions. So I would err on the side of easier in this for absolute beginners. Obviously, I think if you have very advanced students, you could go the other way. But for beginners, keep it easy. You can always add more. And sort of, if one student is going ahead, you can add some extra work. All right. So, and lots of visual aids. And here are some examples of possible task types. Okay, so here are some points. Just some extra notes. As teachers, we often adapt coursebook activities to make them more suitable, make a text a bit shorter, add in more questions, take some out to make a task look more attractive, accessible. In other words, try not to be a slave to the coursebook if it isn't serving you well. So if you are teaching at a school and you have a coursebook and it's too hard or too easy, you can always adapt. You're not tied to that entirely. You know, base it on that. All right. So more about keeping the TTT to a minimum. So this is also very important. When you are talking, use short, simple, relevant sentences. Not like me now, for instance. If your sentence needs a comma, your sentence is too long. So keep instructions very short, very relevant. Too much TTT will overwhelm students. If you are explaining things for ages, if you're feeling that you're explaining and explaining and explaining, your students will probably not understand what you're talking about. Give instructions using the imperative. So just short. Like, everyone take out your pencils. So like really simple. Keep explanations concise and simple. Support your words with body language. So this is also something we often say with younger students. So, you can show when something's good, or you're not sure, or even listen to it, or so you can use mime, all the things that you probably use more frequently with younger students can also be very useful with beginners. All right, scaffolding, again, we come back to it. So in this context, we need support. So thank you. We have got our very, very good definition for that. So give clear instructions with demonstrations. So if there is a task, you can show them how the first one will go. So this is the first example. Monitor constantly to spot students who are struggling and offer support. Use task prompts, as I said before, such as sentence stems. So a lot of you will be familiar with this when you are doing your assignments. So specifically for the grammar assignments, so either in L5A, L3A, or L5B assignments, the grammar ones, and the controlled practice exercises, which are scaffolded exercises. So you know about that, where you have like gap fill, that the sentence is given, it's just a word missing. That is the kind of thing, that's an example of a scaffolded worksheet. And then with a freer practice thing, you would give sentence stems. So like the one, for instance, if we go to an assignment, if we have L3A, he something TV, obviously you wouldn't necessarily teach that grammar to these beginners. So was watching when the lights went out, or in the L5B, obviously those two assignments are not for beginners, but you know in theory what we're talking about. Okay. Not like me talking too much in long sentences. Okay. So here we've got more about scaffolding. Model new language carefully. Allow ample processing time. So again, you can wait. You must wait for the answers. Use visuals whenever possible to support comprehension. So pictures, slides, graphs, diagrams, all that kind of thing. And as we said before, integrate pair and group work as much as possible. And even classwork, that you're not singling out one person at a time, which I think even more for adults can be terrifying. And more about set well-graded tasks, simple and achievable. Keep task wording short and uncluttered. Use the target language as much as possible, not in the warmer. For those doing assignments, not in the warmer, only after the presentation stage. Avoid using language that is too difficult. So you can check on the words that you can use. Having a blank what you check it on. And again, so this is with a task, you give an example first before you expect that everyone is doing it on their own. So, examples of tasks: matching lexical items to pictures. So that's a great thing, specifically for, actually not only just for children, even if you were teaching greetings, for instance, photographs of people in restaurants or meeting at the airport or booking tickets. Pictures can be useful there as well. So not even just for younger learners. Simple gap fills for target language accuracy. So if you are learning a new grammar point, a gap fill is an easy kind of, not it's an easy exercise, but it's a simple structure that works very well. Have guided conversations with sentence stems and visual support. That again would be in the freer practice stage. And short interviews to practice question formation. So often when you teach a grammar point, you then have to teach the negative and the question form. So if the students are working in pairs, they could interview each other. Even if it's just very simple, it would still work. All right. Great. So let's look more about visual aids. So pictures, photos, drawings, and even videos, I suppose. If videos that are not word-based can also be very useful. Then our crazy word, regalia, it's even crazy to say, which in words that I understood before are like props. So that's something you would use in a play. So where you bring things to class. So you've got photos or objects, because sometimes having an actual thing instead of just a picture is also useful. And visual, especially if it makes a noise, like a bell or anyway, that kind of thing. Then, as we said before, don't just talk, use your body language, use your facial expressions. You don't have to always mime, but mime can actually help. You explain, you say, I'm just thinking when I speak in a second language, I often use, so if I speak in a second language, often you can't think of the word and you use mime. So the other way around, if you're teaching, mime can help, other way around. Posters on the wall, so kind of thing where you have words, where you have grammar points. Graphic organizers for tasks, so those will be things like mind maps, where you have things written on the board, and video, as I mentioned before. So posters where you could have things like, how do you say this in English? How do you spell that? And graphic organizers can also be tables, charts, maps, mind maps, spidergrams. Oh my word, I even know what a spidergram is. But they can appeal to logical, organized learners. So also, even though your students are beginners, you still get the different kind of students. So some students who like to read things, some students who like to listen, some students who like visuals. So all those different kinds of students you get at all the different kind of levels. All right. So keep all of these in mind. Okay, and so some extra tips. So the importance of modeling. Okay, so modeling is where you show how it's done first, which is great for specifically for pronunciation. You say how it's done first, or show how the exercise is done first. So if it's a speaking or written exercise that you show and tell, basically, is very, and specifically pronunciation. So when you're doing the ed at the end of all those verbs, the regular verbs, a lot of pronunciation work, lots of choral drilling before you ask for individual repetition. So if the whole class says things together, if we do our homework, we will understand. If we do our homework, we will understand. Before you ask one student to do it by themselves. So choral drilling is great, and because there's nothing terrifying about that. That's why a million years ago, when we were at primary school and in the olden days, people would learn timetables as choral drilling because it sort of works. Okay. Make your class an English-only zone. That can be terrifying, but very, very useful, because specifically if you have a class you are teaching students online and they're all from the same country, or you are teaching in that country and they all speak the same language, it can be very tempting for the students to speak in their first language and not in English. So keep that in mind. All right. Some teachers see nothing wrong with using the L1 in a classroom, but here in the TEFL Academy, we disagree. We don't use L1 as students come to rely on you for translation. This is a very good point. Rather than trying to work things out for themselves, it's not very easy, but it can be a trap to use Google Translate and just keep on giving the translation for something instead of the student discovering the meaning through working through the work. I think because how many words can you actually just learn? I just saw a question, which I will ask right now so that we don't go on. L1 is first language. So if you say some students, L1 would be their first language. So they are Japanese, or they are Vietnamese, or German, or Italian. So that's the student's first language. All right. Great. And enjoy yourself. Teaching beginners is uniquely rewarding because you are, in a way, it's like teaching grade 1. You're the first teacher. So your students will probably, what you teach them will be the first thing they've ever learned. So they'll always remember you. And challenging in some ways. I mean, again, all different all different variations of teaching have different, high points and low points and things that are harder and more difficult. But it is very, very rewarding to teach a beginner and see them progress and learn. All right, great. So I think we've come to the end of our slides. It's not overly, like we've dealt with a lot of stuff, but I think there are lots of places where people can ask some more questions. So I will now go through this list of lovely comments before we even start with the Q&A and greet you. So yes, from Mississippi, from Peru, from Benoni, South Africa, from New Zealand, UK, hi guys, Germany, Mexico. It's always from the Netherlands. Here we have a question immediately. So let's actually go to our special Q&A screen and go immediately into questions. So thank you and keep them coming. We have half an hour that is free to ask any questions that you have. So here is a great question. Do you expect absolute beginners to have a notebook if older than littlies and write down new content, or is this too overwhelming at the start? Is it better to let them just listen and soak it up? I would imagine notebooks are great, good old-fashioned notebooks. So if all students have some kind of notebook, whether you are teaching them in person in a classroom or if it's online, I always find notebooks very useful. If somebody's written down and you've actually written something, you are more likely to remember it. But some lessons don't expect students to take notes. You take notes at university that you must write, and then you don't really hear because you're so busy writing. So I think you just a balance. You might want to say you can write these 2 words down, or you can write this grammar rule down, but they don't have to necessarily write notes. Listen and soak it up, I think, is good. And probably whatever format you're teaching, there's some kind of syllabus. So either a textbook, or if you're online, you have your own lesson plans. So you'll have to balance it, but great question. Thank you. This is another lovely comment. Silence is very good. Yes. It's difficult, I think. Maybe some people think I'm patient. I think I have patience for people waiting. I can wait, and if someone doesn't get it, I can explain a million times. But sometimes if you just ask a question and there's no answer, you think, I'll ask it again. I'll ask it a different way. But sometimes you just, as I said earlier, they probably are translating first. Because if you've ever spoken or done work or learned a second language in any way, you know that you really know that language when you aren't translating. Sometimes like a sentence could go by and think, I didn't translate that. I understood it. But if you are a beginner, you are translating. Yuck. Sit. What does that mean? Okay, sit. Okay. And it means in your own language. All right. Great. We have other teachers here from Cape Town, from United Arab Emirates. Here is another great question. Lucia, thank you. Would you just teach vocabulary so they get used to the words? When would you start with grammar rules? Some grammar rules, it seems like, grammar. But you can't really talk without grammar. So there are some things that you need to learn right away, like present simple, like sit down, stand up. You have to teach grammar from the start. Maybe you're not saying this is a grammar lesson, but you can't really speak without grammar. So a combination. vocabulary. And if you've ever, I must admit, I've taught more beginner children than beginner adults. I've taught a few. But if you, like the book, like the lesson plan will often have one grammar rule and 5 new words that are part of the same, like I've got visuals of animals jumping in puddles, or weather and animals, and like it rains and there'll be a frog. So you have combination of grammar and vocabulary, and for adults it will be a similar thing. Obviously not puddles and frogs, but it would be often greeting, hello, how are you, will be the kind of first start, and you have to say, how are you? I am fine. And present simple. So you do learn grammar actually right from the start, even if you don't explain all the grammar. You don't have to go into detail. You do still teach grammar, even if it's very simple. But when you look through any lesson plan, and you can go online and do your own, etc., they always go hand in hand. You won't get, you often don't get only grammar and only vocabulary. All right. Great question. Thank you. Sarah, what is a very good first ever lesson? Teaching name, age, your name kind of thing, getting students to say my name, what is your name, hello, goodbye. Yes. I'm remembering, I have actually taught those kind of lessons. Greeting is good, because if you travel, so you say you are learning English to travel, those are the kind of things you need to know right from the start, and how to say I can speak English or I can't speak English. So those greetings are good, and my name is, how are you? And like even silly things like weather, it is hot, because we have weather in every language. So it's a kind of thing. And food is also nice, because food is, I find it, we all have different food, but we all eat. So it's a great way of sharing. Like you could say, I eat this and you eat that in your country. And it's a nice, I think I just like food. So I've had a lot of first lessons where I chat about food, because you will often, like, you're teaching someone, you think, I've never been there, but I love to eat that kind of food. So you have a sort of an inroad, and that's just a fun thing. I find that's quite fun. I like food. Okay. Thank you. Great question. For your very first class, does the language school usually prepare you for their level? Yes, I think you will. A1, B1, or that. It depends. It really depends. I often say that in these webinars. I say it depends a lot, but it really does. So if you are teaching, let's just start with one example. So if you're teaching one student, just like you Preply or something, or you work for an online school and you have individual students, then you'll probably be told this student is a beginner. If you are in a classroom, you will also get told, this is, you would know if it's a beginner class or an elementary class or an advanced class. So they would tell you. And if there is a mix, you would also probably be told. I don't think, one's not always, you're not left out, not knowing. The information will be shared, with joy. This class, maybe even it is a mixed class, that you will get told. I know, for instance, again, I've mentioned Preply, but if you have Preply students, the student does a test before you even see them, and so you have an idea of what the level is. So you will know, and not like, I don't think you'll get thrown in the deep end. That's what I was trying to think. Although you might get You might be told and it's not entirely correct, but you should be told. All right. Thank you. Lovely question. How do you help your beginners form realistic expectations but keep them positive and motivated? I think perhaps they know. I don't know. It depends. If you have a beginner one-to-one online, you could teach that beginner for the next 3 years. So realistically, in 3 years, they could surge ahead. Children often learn a second language quicker. So within a shorter space of time, they might actually, make great progress. So, I think just every new lesson is a new day. There's new material, and just keep upbeat. You got a class, it's probably more easy to keep upbeat because different students will be making breakthroughs, and there'll always be someone doing well that you can almost lift up the energy and mood. But it depends. I don't think that children think about it. Younger learners won't think necessarily about what their expectations are. For adults, I would ask what their expectations were. I would actually just put it to them. What do you expect to learn? And what do you need to learn? Do you need to be fluent? Do you need to just understand the basics? So I would put it to the student and ask what their expectations are. That is what I would do. But a great question. Journeyman. Thank you. Very first class, does the language... Okay, we've sort of had that one, but thank you. I answered that one. Okay, yes. So we did chat about this. Thank you. Very nice. Okay. How would you approach teaching children as absolute beginners? Groups of words, vocabulary, family members, fruit, vegetables. Yes. I do think if you group things together, it's easier to remember. So if you do fruit and then you learn strawberry, banana, watermelon, generally pictures, and then food is a good one, as I said before. So food's great. So if you learn fruit, it's a kind of word, those are the kind of words that students, specifically kids, will remember well. Colors, animals, all those groups of words are great. Things that you can remember grade 1, that there were posters on the wall. Those kind of words will be learned quite quickly. Nouns. In fact, nouns for beginners are probably easier to learn than verbs and adjectives, and certainly adverbs, for instance. So nouns are probably the easiest. And then verbs are good. So once you've learned the food and the cats and dogs, then you need drink and walk and jump. And so verbs, I would say, are the second group. But those are great things because also they're fun and very achievable, specifically for kids as beginners. I think even teenagers, they would have to be, they would be like not just dogs and cats, be social media or movies. But if you have groups of words, I don't know, if you think back to learning in grade 1 or learning a second language, that if you have a group of words, you've got something to put your words into, you remember them better. So if there's a group, then you're more likely to remember it and keep it. Okay, very nice. Thank you. Usha, would you give them homework? Simple words to copy and then progress to easy sentences. Homework's great. I think if you are teaching at a school where you see the kids every day, then some kind of fun homework. They could even draw a picture if these are beginner kids again. So fun homework's good. I know that Online students, if you give them homework, they very seldom remember. If you see a student once a week, they very seldom remember to do their homework. Very seldom. Those are sort of medium-sized children. Very seldom. But I think if you have kids that you actually see every day or twice a week in an actual classroom, then yes. Fun stuff. Make a book and stick things in, give them, stickers and that kind of thing. That's fun and motivating. All right, very nice. So many great questions. You have to have many different lessons prepared, beginner or more intermediate on hand. This again, as I said, depends. If you work at a school, you probably will have, there will be a textbook, a course book. So you don't actually have to, have all the lessons prepared. You will know that that student is on page 47, and then you see them again and you pick up page 47. And it depends if they're a beginner or intermediate or advanced. Most schools have textbooks and online. Not many people teach online privately, other than like through prep or something. I'm sure people do, but it's not as common. So a more common job is to get a job at a school. So you travel to South America or Europe or Asia and teach at a school, or you get a job online and teach at a school. In which case you probably will be given material and lessons and a course book. If you teach privately, which you can do through, Preply is another, I always mention it because I've had students on Preply, so I know of that, then you do need to have lessons prepared. And then once you have your lessons prepared, then you've got them forever. So just like the lessons you do in your assignments, those kind of lessons, you can keep them and go back to them. Also, once you've done one grammar lesson, so you've done your grammar lesson for your assignment and you know all about the first conditional, for example, you can swap that to grammar for a different grammar point, a different target language, a different level. But if you know your PPP lesson plan, you can actually, you know that. So you can find some, so you pick your grammar point, you know the level, and you go and find some worksheets. And then you're actually ready to go. Once you are used to the eliciting and you're used to how the lesson plan goes, you can it's like almost copy and paste your lessons in a way. So every lesson you plan and you've done, you keep a note of and file for future. So say you've done a beginner's lesson on animals, and then you can do another beginner's lesson on insects. So once you are prepared, you can sort of swap those lessons around and add to them and keep them and keep your file, your own personal file of lessons. But as I say, if you work at a school, they will probably give you the material. But great question again. Thank you. For false beginners, one-to-one class online, should we do a test before the first class or take some test from the internet? There are tests. Again, if you're working for a school, they will probably help you out with that and tell you. If not, there are different kinds of tests you could do. Like, for instance, as an example, some students work on an IELTS system. So you could ask some IELTS kind of questions and go, okay, what level is the student? So that's not the CEFR level. That would be an IELTS level. You go, oh, the student's at a 4. Or the students at a 2, or whatever it is. So there are different tests that you can find online. And, there are different ways you can, or you can just have a chat. If you have a chat to a student, you'll probably go, oh, my word, that's students at this level. You go, oh, they're very advanced. So, and the more frequently you do it, the more you'll get used to it, and you'll know, okay, this is an advanced, this is an intermediate kind of student. Not that you'll necessarily get it 100% right each time, but you'll get a feeling. You'll go, okay, no, that very beginner, that's an A1 or an A2. But the more experience you have and the more frequently you do it, the more you'll get used to it. And there are tests on the internet. If you just search, so depending on which format, they're all different ways of testing. So there's a CEFR is a 1 with an A1, B1, and as IELTS has got level 9. 9 is the most advanced. 1 and 2 will be the absolute beginners. Perfect. Great question as well. Thank you. All right. How many lesson plans do you usually have on hand? Well, once you've done a couple of classes, you've got them. And once you've finished your course here, you'll have 2 or 3 lesson plans that you'll have done. And adapt. You've got, so how many do you have to hand? A few that you sort of have one and then you adapt it. So you start with one and then you change it and work on it. The more you teach and the more, I've often, to be honest, I've worked for a lot of places where the lessons have been provided, which does make one a bit lazier. So when you have to do a completely, you're off your own bad lesson, you have to do harder work. But once you know the format and you know who you're dealing with, you can put it together. I won't say that quickly, but it won't take too long. I say, okay, thank you. And thanks, Usha, for your online students. Thank you very much. All right, I think we still have time, but I think I've got through all of the questions that are here so long. So again, if you have more, there is still time. I'm getting horse. I'm not getting a horse, just getting horse. So there is still time to chat and time for more questions. Do you think of things? The links to testing websites. Oh my word. Now I don't actually know offhand. Perhaps if you go to TTA has a blog section on their website, and then they might have a list of them. But I would literally just Google. Google is, you can always just say, if you go CEFR tests, and then loads will come up. Lots and lots and lots will come up immediately. And then you can look through them and you go, oh no, that one's awful. And that was far too advanced. Or CFR tests for children, free. You don't want to pay for them. So literally just check through them. There will be lots. It's not the kind of thing that you won't find. I'm just thinking of a very silly thing. But my daughter, who is 18, I often say, I found something. And she says, I always say it as if it was difficult to find. Now she just knows that you can just get anything. I said, did you find it? She's like, well, obviously. So I'm not saying that about this, but you can actually find everything. Whoever takes an 18-year-old to tell you, you can just, you find it. Yeah, obviously. So you will find this. Take it from my daughter that it's all there. You just have to Google and it's there. All right. Even if you're old, you can still do it and find it. I found it. Well, obviously. Okay. How do you help very self-critical students relax? Oh, my word. Kindness. Patience. If it's in a group scenario, you can always say it pairs or groups. which can be helpful, can also put that very self-critical student in an awkward position. That's very hard. I mean, kindness, really. Just patience, and it's just well done, and and like a lot of praise, and realistic praise. Yeah, not like, oh, that was amazing, but like, you did really well, and yeah, you've achieved a lot, and now you know this, and you can always remember it and give reassurance. If it's one-to-one, maybe I see an answer from another student. Deep breaths. Yes, it's true. Everyone, and if it's in a class, everyone. So not just you take a deep breath. Obviously, everyone take a deep breath and out is a good thing. Calm down. Don't get too stressed. Well, it's not the end of the world. Keep calm and carry on, but it's not the end of the world. If we didn't achieve it today, we can achieve it next time. We can achieve it tomorrow. And yeah, no, it's very hard. I think if you are teaching one-to-one, it might be a little easier because you'll sort of eventually get to know that student and be able to be there with them, hold their hand through it. If there's a very self-critical student amongst a big group, you just have to be gentle and give extra support when you can. But it's not an easy one. That's the kind of that's where some of the difficulty is, because it can be just absolutely terrifying. All right, thank you. Lovely question, and here's a lovely answer to that, Sarah. Thank you. Have to let them feel safe to not be great. Markers of their success will be things like just having a go and not being afraid to be wrong. Completely. That is such a beautiful answer. Thank you. That being right is not, it's not school. You don't have to pass. It's not your matric exams. It's okay. Just try. Just try, and every step you make is a step you've made. So that's a great, thank you. Beautiful advice. Thank you. It's hard. All of us, again, as I've said, if you speak a second language, I do that. I even teach some children music in my second language, which is Afrikaans, which sometimes they understand what I'm saying. Perhaps not always. And it's horrible to speak a second language when you are not fluent. I mean, obviously, I've learned it since I was at school, but if you weren't in a scenario where you had to speak it, and then the town I live in, English is not the first language, so I've had to learn to speak a second language, which is terrifying because you feel silly or you feel stupid, and your pronunciation's not nice and your accent is off. So I completely understand it. I think, as I say, anyone who's ever had to speak a second language, really, we understand the difficulty and how terrifying it can be, because we all make the mistakes. So it really does mean that you can be completely sympathetic and empathetic if you know. So lovely, lovely comment. Thank you. Okay. When do you know when absolute beginners are progressing to the next level? I think you will feel it, the sentences will start becoming a little longer. Yeah, the grammar will start coming together. Yeah, it won't just be frog puddle. It will be the frog is jumping in the puddle. So you will, that's, I think, sentences, when the conversation becomes more than just words. It's not just individual words. As soon as we start to hear some kind of conversation and full sentences, I think we're getting there. This is the first step towards the next level. It could take an awful long time. I think sometimes a beginner whether false or not entirely false, as like a young teen, that's the kind where it could take forever. They may never get to the next level. I'm being silly, but that's where you really think they might never get to the next level. All right. Thank you. Such great questions. I always feel that when I know it's just me talking too much, but we do, when ideas are shared, as you know, all teachers can share ideas, and as teachers we also can learn from other teachers and even from the students that we are teaching. Always be open to learn. Not that we are all beginners, but some of you will be absolute beginner teachers. So there's also that. So then think about how beginner language students will feel when you are a beginner teacher. So you have to always think about how other people feel. Think where they're at, where you're at. All right, this is always so much fun. There's still a minute or two for questions, but I will go into the next part of this bit and say that all of the previous webinars, and there are loads of them now, lots of them, because every single Saturday we do webinars. Me and other people, we all do lots and lots of webinars, and they're all there on the YouTube channel in the video section. And they are all useful. So they are webinars for all of the assignments that tell you exactly what you need to do. And there are webinars about traveling and about advanced students and beginner students and teaching overseas and teaching online and making videos for when you apply for a job. So there are lots and lots and lots of great webinars with lots of different people doing the webinars. So they are great fun to watch and find out and learn. So thank you. And then also, this one will also be on the YouTube, I think from Tuesday. It only takes a couple of days. Okay, here we have another lovely question. Is there a complete list that exists somewhere so we can check off our progress as we go through training? Is that a list of videos of webinars? Yes. Yes, if you go to that page, if you go to the YouTube channel and then the video section, there are, I don't know if it's a list or if it's just a whole bunch, a list of the webinars. You could just look through them, scroll, and then after a few, then you'll see it's repeated again. There are about 20 different ones, I think. I don't know if there's a complete list. You know what I always can say? Send a ticket to tutor support, and then they will probably be able to give you a list of all of the. Whenever you have a question, you can send a ticket to tutor support, and then someone will find you exactly what you need, because there are a whole bunch of people working there who can also just find what you need to know. All right. And then the next slide, at the end of in a minute or two, we will put this up and ask if you can just spend an extra minute or two and tell us what you thought of this webinar. There's a QR code, and then you go to the Survey Monkey. It won't really do that. It's a pity. And sorry, I talk such nonsense. All right. So tell us if it was useful and helpful, and if you would love there to be, I really wish there was a webinar that would help me on this, then you're welcome to ask for that. And that will be done in the future. So thank you so much for joining me and we all joined each other. Thank you for the lovely comments. Thank you. I always enjoy this. I think it's fun, and I think teaching is fun, and I hope that in your teaching journey you also think it's fun, and teaching beginners is fun. It can be challenging, but it also can be so very, very rewarding. So thank you for being here, and Enjoy the rest of your morning. I'm trying to think if you are in America, or your evening if you are in Europe or Africa, or night if you are in New Zealand. Then you probably woke up in the middle of the night. Get all my clocks going. If you teach online, then you do get used to clocks from around the world. Okay, so thank you and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And enjoy your course and your teaching. So, bye.